Hello, everyone, and welcome to the May Consulting webinar from CDI. Today's webinar is A Bridge Too Far, No More. Create your own integration with the Laserfiche Connector. My name is Michael Mathis, and I'm the Client Services Director at CDI, and I will be your host for today's presentation. During today's presentation, if you do have any questions, please post them to the questions box in GoToMeeting at any time. We have staff watching the questions through the presentation, and we will get to any additional questions at the end of the presentation today. At any time, if you do have an immediate question or there is something wrong with my audio, for example, you can raise your hand at any time to get my attention. A few tips for success during today's webinar. Be sure to take good notes and screenshots to refresh your memory later. Don't be afraid to ask questions during the webinar. Please complete the survey after our webinar today. We do value your feedback, and we do take any suggestions you have into consideration for future webinars. And remember that this webinar today will be recorded and available on the CDI YouTube page, typically within a day or two after the webinar. Today's topic is creating your own integration with the Laserfiche Connector, and the intended audience for today's webinar is Laserfiche administrators. If you're not a Laserfiche administrator, there will still be plenty of valuable information for you during the webinar today, so please stay in attendance. During our webinar today, we are going to cover some pre-installation information for the Laserfiche Connector, the general options settings, how to build a connector profile, and customizing the keyboard shortcuts and on-screen buttons for the connector. So first of all, what is the Laserfiche Connector? The Laserfiche Connector is another application from Laserfiche that is available with Laserfiche Cloud and subscription licensing, or as an add-on for Avante or Rio licensing. The Laserfiche Connector allows you to create custom integrations with your line of business applications. During our webinar today, we will be using QuickBooks Online as our line of business application. And we can easily integrate that application through the use of embedded buttons or user-defined hotkeys. And these can invoke many different actions within the Laserfiche Connector, such as searching the repository, assigning template and field values to search results, launching Laserfiche scanning and pre-populating metadata, importing documents to the repository, passing information to a workflow or business process to invoke that workflow or process, getting information from one or more applications and writing that information to another application, opening a website directly from the third-party application, and others. We'll only be going through a handful of these scenarios, but there is additional information on each of these options available in the help documentation for the Laserfiche Connector. Part of the pre-installation process is using the Laserfiche Connector test utility to ensure compatibility with your third-party application. There are 32 and 64-bit versions available. You can test against your intended applications to ensure they are compatible. And with the test utility, profiles are not saved nor used. It's just to ensure that the connector is able to read information from that third-party application. The connector test utility and additional information about the utility is available at the Laserfiche Support site. For the connector installation, there are two types of installations. There's the runtime only installation, which is going to be the installation typically used on workstations. The profile creator option is going to be installed on the workstations of your power users typically. These will be the users that have the ability to create or edit profiles. The installation also includes a Chrome browser compatibility utility, and this is going to need to be run to ensure compatibility with the Google Chrome browser and Laserfiche connector. The connector will still work without this utility installed. However, the UI automation option may not be available or may take a longer time to run. To access the Laserfiche connector, there is a plug icon in your Windows taskbar. Typically, the connector is going to launch at startup, and it'll be available from the Actions button, the upward pointing caret. And clicking on the plug icon will open up the context menu with the available features for connector. For the configuration wizard, this needs the profile creation utility installed and has all of the options for adding profiles, editing profiles, enabling or disabling, setting options, and clearing saved sign-in information. The connector options dialog has the ability to change the launch on startup, keyboard shortcut focus, and button and target application functionality. We can change the display language of the Laserfiche connector. And most importantly, we can configure our profile path. This will allow us to load profiles from a network location or a shared location so multiple users can use those same profiles. By putting in the optional path, both local and shared profiles can be used. So users can create profiles on their local machine if they have the profile creation utility, and they can also utilize shared profiles from the network share. Copies of created profiles are found in the Windows users roaming program data folder. And we can change where we load those profiles from using the input box in the options dialog. For building profiles, the Laserfiche connector supports multiple profiles for various purposes on any workstation. The installation license is based on the total number of full users in your system, and some additional configuration for some web browsers is needed. For example, we mentioned Google Chrome, and the connector is able to integrate with desktop applications as well. If those desktop applications run as a Windows administrator on your machine, the Laserfiche connector must also run as a Laserfiche administrator in order for the connector to be able to pull that information. When we are getting data from our application, we can retrieve data in a variety of ways. We can use JavaScript to find the controls. This method should be used with most desktop applications and with websites. You can also use the UI automation method for either of these. And the third option, which we will not be going over today, is going to be using OCR to extract text. This option is going to generate text directly from the window using OCR, and it does not actually interact with any controls on the page. This option is typically going to be used with quote-unquote green screen applications or command line style applications. There are many options for the OCR parameters, and Typically, these options will need to be adjusted to get the best results. And these settings are all configurable in the OCR parameters.xml file. We have a handy matrix available that goes through the different settings and the default values, value ranges, and helpful notes on each of the options. During our profile build demonstration today, we will be going over naming the profile and choosing an action, getting information from our line of business application, the repository connection information. During today's webinar, we will be using Laserfiche Cloud and the web client. The Laserfiche connector also works with a self-hosted environment and the Laserfiche desktop client. We'll go through some search criteria, scanning options, and document import options, field mapping and or template assignment, running the profile, and testing. All right, at this point, we are done with our presentation and we will move into our live demonstration. So here I have QuickBooks Online open to the Customers tab under the Sales Hub. If we open up the Laserfiche Connector configuration, here we can see our Options button to open the Options dialog, where we can change the options we had discussed during the demonstration. We can clear the saved sign-in information for any of our profiles. And the fun part is adding in new profiles. So during the live demonstration, we will be creating just a handful of profiles for searching for documents, populating template information, and scanning new documents with Laserfiche scanning. So to get started, we are going to open up an invoice to configure a profile for viewing the invoice documentation in Laserfiche. If we go back to our connector configuration and click the Add button, we are going to name our profile QBO View Invoice. Our action is going to be search for documents. Here's where we can choose to assign template information or any of the other many actions that Laserfiche Connector has available. And we are going to search for these documents in the Laserfiche web client. We'll click Next and add in our source application. So if we click the Add Source Application button, we can drag our crosshair icon to our application. And it will populate information to make sure that we have the correct application. And we can here select our different options for analyzing. Today I'm going to use the UI automation option. And we are going to configure this to be used on this page only. Here, since we have a query string that's going to change, I'm going to delete that and replace it with a .* to match any value there. We'll click Save, and that will analyze our application. And now we can add in the tokens that we will need. So we will provide a name for our token. And we are going to capture our invoice number. We will drag our crosshair icon over the invoice number, and we can see the red outline available. And here it will show our token content. Sometimes the connector will pick up different values or different options available. In this case, we only have one for the actual text we want, so we will accept that value. Clicking next, we will specify the web client repository. So here we're going to use app.laserfiche.com and enter in our repository ID. For this example, I want to use an advanced search. However, we can build our search using the basic search options provided within Laserfiche by searching document text and or entering names, all fields, or annotation text. We will change this to advanced search and enter in our advanced search syntax. To build the advanced search syntax, you can also open up your Laserfiche repository and enter in your advanced search filters. So we will search within our selected folder. And we can change this to be the customer invoice template. And when we click search, that will run a search with our ... icon. We can then view our search syntax. And this will pull up the exact search ID or search syntax that Laserfiche is using to run this search. Here in our search, we are using a token to populate our invoice number. So under the token menu, we can select invoice number, which is the token we collected from one of our previous screens. We have window tokens available, such as the window title and the window URL, as well as system tokens. Another option we have available is to show the search count, which we will check for our demonstration here. And this will show the number of search results that are returned by the connector when we open the page and not when we actually click the connector button. So here I'm going to use password authentication for Laserfiche Cloud and select Next. For running the profile, we can create a button and keyboard shortcuts to launch this profile. With the button properties, we can select Use Default Settings, or we can customize the size, position, and icon. So our 22 by 22 pixels is a little small. I'm going to make this 28 pixels, and we're going to allow users to reposition our button. We're not going to enable a keyboard shortcut for our demo today, but if we click our next button, we can now test our profile to make sure that it runs the search that we want. So here we have no search results, but we can see in our search syntax that it did pull in our 1038 invoice number. So our search syntax looks to be correct. At this point, we can finish to save our profile. And now we see our Laserfiche connector icon in the top of the window. It's telling me sign in is required, so I'm going to click to sign in and enter my username and password. And I'm going to check the Remember Me box, so I don't need to enter my credentials again for this profile. And we can see here we found 0 entries in our repository. If we close this invoice, go back to customers, and let's go to Freeman Sporting Goods and view invoice number 1030. Here we have our connector starting. And we found one entry. If we click our link, that will open up that one entry in our repository. We can then view the invoice document and any fields associated with that document. Which is fantastic. However, I want to see all of the invoices available for Bill's Windsurf Shop. So if we select Bill's Windsurf Shop, we can create a new connector profile. We will add and call this one QBO Customer Invoices. Again, we're going to search for documents in the Laserfiche web client. Click Next. We will add our source application by dragging our crosshairs anywhere in our Chrome window. And we'll use UI automation to find our controls and change our query string to .star. Here we are going to be searching based on our customer name. So we will drag our crosshair to our customer name. And that pulled up Bill's Windsurf Shop. So we know we have the correct value. On our next tab, we will enter in our web client repository information. And we are going to run an advanced search again. We will select our show search count. And in this profile, we want to view all of our search results in a docked window. We will sign in using password authentication. And we will allow our users to reposition the button and change this to 28 pixels because my old eyes can't see smaller. And we can test our profile. It looks like it is not working. I must have entered in my search incorrectly. So we'll go back to our search criteria and change the token to customer name. Oh, I spelled customer incorrectly. And we will test one more time. And there we see the invoices available for Bill's Windsurf Shop. Now that we have our profile tested and working, we can select Finish. And that is going to start our profile. I'm going to sign into my new profile. Select Remember Me and OK. So here it shows we found 2 results in the repository. And because this is a webinar, the side panel opened up on my other screen, so I'm going to bring that over. Here I need to sign into my Laserfiche Cloud account. And this will then show the search results for those two items. If we instead view Amy's Bird Sanctuary, this will start our profile, sign in, search, and again we found two results. And here are those two search results. If we want to hide this window, we can click the two inward pointing arrows or the two outward pointing arrows to show it again. If we right click on our button, we can move and reset our button position. So here I want to move this over to the left further so that it doesn't interfere with my other buttons on the top. If we close our window and click our Found link, this will open up our search results. We can double click the result to open that document in the Laserfiche web client. This is not my preferred way of using the Laserfiche connector. I prefer to view the search results in a new tab. So I will edit my profile and we will next through. And I'm going to uncheck the search results in a docked window box. We will next the rest of the way through. Our profile saved, so it's refreshing. If we click our found link again, that's still going to open my search results. I need to refresh my profiles. All right, our next option available is to populate a template using information from our screen. So we go back to our invoices and we will select Bill's Windsurf Shop and view our invoice. This is the screen that has all of the information we need. So we will download our invoice to have a sample document to test with. And I am going to import that into my incoming documents folder in Laserfiche. All right, we are going to leave our template unassigned because that is what we are going to be testing with the connector. And I am going to import our document. Now in our Laserfiche connector profile configuration utility, we will add a new profile. And call this QBO populate invoice. Our action this time is going to be to assign template and fields to documents. We are going to use the Laserfiche web client and select next. We will go back to QuickBooks and add our application. And again, we will use UI automation and change our query string to .star. And now we are going to configure our tokens again. So we're going to collect a handful of information, such as our invoice number. We will collect our invoice date and select this from our input. And here we do have two options available. So we have a label or we have the value. And the value is showing the information we want to select, so we will select value. We will add our customer name. And again, we will change this to the value. And we will add our invoice total. I am going to scroll down and select our total from our value here and click Next. We will sign into our web client again. And we are going to specify our search criteria. Again, I am going to use an advanced search because I want to be very specific with what I am looking for. So we are going to search for a document named invoice with our invoice number and look in the accounts receivable incoming documents folder. We'll select Next, and we will choose to assign the following template. We'll click Load to load our templates. And we will choose our customer invoice template from the list. We can optionally remove the templates fields when it is unassigned. So if there's an existing template and we want to clear that information, you can check the box to do so when the template is changed. Next, we're going to populate our fields using field mapping. So we will use our customer name, our invoice date, our invoice number, and our invoice total. Next, under running the profile, we will again customize. 28 pixels allow the users to reposition the button, and select Next. So here we can test our profile. And it's going to warn us that this may overwrite existing values in our Laserfiche repository. So we can choose yes to continue or no to cancel. Here I'm going to continue. It's going to read the information from the screen. Ask me to sign in again. And here it shows that it found one document, and we can choose to assign our fields to these search results. I will select yes. And we have an error for the field invoice total. So we'll click OK and go back to our template information, or I'm sorry, field mapping. And we can open up our token dialog and we have additional options available. So here our result value includes the $sign, and that's what's going to be causing our error. So we can filter that out using a regular expression. We'll click OK, next, next, and test one more time. And we will click yes. Sign in for testing. And we will click yes again to assign the field values to our results. And now we have field values have been updated on one entry. So we'll click OK there. If we refresh our Find Invoice profile, we can now see it found one entry. We will click to open. And our invoice has been filled in, our invoice template, with all of the information from the screen. So let's click Finish to save our profile. There is another option that is also very fun, where we can create a profile to fill the information on the opened document. So let's say we don't have a good way of searching for that specific document. We can add a new profile. We'll name this Populate Invoice Template Current Document. We want to assign template and fields to documents. And we want this to be on the currently open Laserfiche document. The restriction here is this will only work in the Laserfiche Windows client. So we can add our source application again. .star UI automation, save. We will assign our templates. Populate our fields. We will use the default settings this time, and now we have our test button available. I'm going to pull up my Laserfiche desktop client. We will pull in our invoice. Again, without a template. And we will open our document. Back in the Laserfiche connector, we can select Test, and we will click Yes at our warning prompt. Connector will grab the information, We will be prompted again to assign the fields to this document just to make sure that the Laserfiche connector selected the correct open document. And we get our message, field values have been updated, and we can see our current field values have been updated. The last profile we will be creating today, after we finish our previous one, is going to be to open Laserfiche scanning to scan in a customer check based off of our invoice. So I'm going to add a new profile. Name it QBO check scanning. And we want to scan documents or pages. We are going to use the Laserfiche web client and select next. Let's open up our invoice again to get back to the screen we need. And we will select receive payment. Add our source application. And here we're going to grab the information that we need for our check. And we will select next. Here we will sign into our web repository. And we will specify our scanning options. So I want these imported into our incoming documents. We have a auto-file workflow configured to automatically file these documents to the correct location in our repository. For more information on auto-filing, you can view the March Consulting webinar titled Always Be Auto-Filing. We'll sign into our repository and select the client checks template. And populate our field information. So we have our customer, we have our check number, we have our amount received, and our date. We will leave invoice number empty because we were not able to capture that from a single field. And we will again use our default settings here. And we can now test our profile. This is going to ask us to sign into our repository. Oh, it stored our login information for us already. And in just a moment, Laserfiche scanning is going to open. And here you can see we have some information, but not all of it is correct. If I close scanning, this is going to be because I did not pull in the correct fields, or I did not populate all of the fields needed. That's okay, so we will double check that we have everything correctly entered: customer, check number, amount received, and date. Value label, we want to change that to value. Whoops. And now we will finish. Okay, so we actually did receive a check from Bill's Windsurf Shop for the payment to this invoice. So let's populate our information in QuickBooks. And we can then click our connector button and select QBO, check scanning. Okay, and that pulled up Laserfiche scanning and populated our template information correctly. If we check settings, we can see that we are scanning into accounts receivable, incoming documents. And let's enter in our invoice number here, which is 1038. And we will start scanning. Here we have our scanned check. We can store the document to the repository. And we are done scanning. If we go back to our repository, we can see here we have our scanned check, and it was auto-filed into the same folder as the associated invoice. At that point, this concludes our live demonstration today. If you do have additional questions, there are a variety of resources available, such as Laserfiche Answers, the Laserfiche Solutions Exchange, and the Cities Digital YouTube page. If you have further questions, please feel free to contact us at consulting@citiesdigital.com, sales@citiesdigital.com, or support@citiesdigital.com. Again, my name is Michael Mathis. I am the Client Services Director here at CDI. And at this time, we will answer any questions that we have from the attendees. All right, I don't see any new questions coming in or hands. Oh, we do have a new question. The question is, do you need to click your profile button each time you want to run a particular process, or is there a way for a connector to pull multiple documents at once? The connector can retrieve multiple documents through searching, and that will open up the search results. Let me bring QuickBooks back. So if we go to customers and look at Amy's Bird Sanctuary, this will automatically start our profile and run our search. So here we have 2 results found. If we select cool cars, the connector is going to detect that we changed and is going to run our search again. So we don't need to click the button every time. If we wanted to scan in multiple documents for this one invoice, say they paid with 2 checks or 3 checks, We could definitely scan in multiple documents at once. Or if we are applying metadata, we can, if the process matches multiple documents, we can select all of those documents in the results to populate that information. All right, are there any additional questions today? All right, I don't see anything new coming in. However, if you do have questions, all of my best questions come to me right after the webinars. Please definitely do reach out to us here at CDI and we will be happy to assist. Thank you very much for attending our webinar today and enjoy the rest of your day.